Deep breaths in, blow that phoenix fire out, baby. That's what's going on here, Heather. That's how I've been feeling. Like a phoenix from the ashes, Scorpio season shall rise.
Yes.
And folks, so shall we.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to rise. Heather, listeners, Miranda, that's me. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome all. Scorpio season. What can we say? Well, nothing. We can just scream and pray for mercy. No, I'm just kidding. This has been a glorious time. Heather, how you feeling?
I'm good. I'm good. It has been a glorious time. It's, I do well during the water seasons. Like, I feel alive.
Mm-hmm. Alive with the glory of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
But the whole idea of like Scorpio confronting you with your shadow, I've been thinking about that a lot. I feel like I have had situations recently where I'm like, wait, shit, that is the part of me that I try to repress that I have to own. Or
Yeah.
I got very,
Truly.
yeah, I got very
Sorry.
deep into this. No. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue, but I got really deep into this podcast. I've been like very on a self-help dive recently also, which I'm always on, but like especially during Scorpio season, which I think makes sense. I think Scorpios are very about like being healthy so you can, be in your power and stuff like that. And it literally, Scorpio is about like getting to the depths of your psychosis, figuring your shit out. And I was listening to this interview with Rainn Wilson from The Office.
I was going to
And
say, Dwight.
yeah. And Stephen Bartlett is his name. This British dude who's on the British version of Shark Tank called Dragon's Den. And he's like a CEO. He became like a huge CEO at like 28 during his Saturn return. And now he does this podcast that's like asking the big life questions. And he has guests on like Rainn Wilson, who's like very philosophical and he has like a whole book that I own about like big world questions, and he's very spiritual. And he was saying that you have to take your shadow. You can't repress the shadow. That's never going to work. You have to take the shadow, sit it on your lap, and treat it like a ventriloquist dummy and like play with it and like let it be a part of you, but don't let it be such a part of you that it's overtaking the ego. But it's like you have to dance with it. You have to perform with it.
What a way to put that.
Right? I love
I've
that
never heard
analogy.
it. Yes. As you know, Heather, I love my analogies, but I've never thought of it that way. I like, they always say like befriend yourself and your demons. And like, if you wouldn't say something to your friend, why would you say it in that negative tone to you? And yes, it's not about being ashamed of the parts of you that you don't like. It's about embracing them, accepting them, because that is what like unacquitted love for like yourself truly is. Or not unrequited, not, what am I trying to say, unconditional love for yourself truly is, yada yada. But to put it in, that's such a comedic way to put it. That's such a, to me, that's such a Dwight way to put it. Yeah, I love that analogy. That's great. Like, right, it's like it's on your lap, but you're in control. You still get to, oh, gorgeous.
And there's often, they say, like,
Scorpio.
A lot of power in owning your shadow. Like that usually does point to like a superpower. And I've been thinking a lot about how I really want attention and I really want to shine. And sometimes when I'm drunk, I'm like, need to take up all the light in the room. But I have to own that part of myself too. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't know, Heather. I cannot relate. Sorry.
All performers.
Folks, for those of you who didn't catch it, that was a bold-faced lie. I am clearly kidding. No, I totally agree. Or just like, I think there's also, totally correct me if I'm wrong, or if you disagree with this, Heather, but I do think there's this idea, especially for the feminine energy, there's this idea to sort of want to dim your light a bit too, to not take up too much space or room. And while I understand that reasoning and that logic or that way of looking at things, I think that's something that women are taught more. I think it's something men rarely are taught respectfully. And and I guess I don't even mean not even so men, but just like the
patriarchy,
like the masculine energy just doesn't seem to, that wouldn't be something that would be brought up in class, for example,
right?
if you were taking masculine energy spiritual studies. But like the feminine energy as a whole is sort of like, I think we're trained in the way our society views it, yada yada. Like the way we're trained to view it is like, oh, let me not take up space. Oh, when I'm in the supermarket and I round the corner and I accidentally, like, me and the same person cut each other off at the exact same time, I'm still gonna say sorry.
Yeah.
And like in a way that's like, what?
It's not necessarily your fault. Yeah.
Right. And so what I think is a beautiful thing is like, why would we dim light ever? Why would light as a resource ever be something we take away when we have always have the option to spread it further, right? And I think the only way to do that is acceptance of yourself. And like that's the only way to like not have any, like, dark spots in your bulb, so to speak.
Yeah.
And like by letting your entire light bulb shine at its full wattage, right? The full capacity you have, you are, I don't know, it just feels like more light should be spread. And I love that, like the overall female energy. And it just does feel, as a society, we're getting better about like, let's let some women take up some space here, shall we? Thank you so much. Or just like, let's let the feminine energy sort of just like maybe call the shots, or like, let's look at it this way, or let's at least remember that it's there, especially in, yes, our patriarchy of a society.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say about this real too quick, Heather.
Yeah.
Or real, like, I don't know if this is Scorpio, again, looking at the depths of things, but of course I was reading an article, which we know means watching a TikTok. But this woman was talking about, especially with the Barbie movie coming out, for example, this like time, the Eras tour, all the works. But like there was, and again, I'm kind of like, this is interesting that I saw this during Scorpio season and sort of this rebirth, this new fire, right? This woman was talking about, I should have prepared to quote it, but I got all excited and I didn't prepare this, but here I go.
Story of my life. Yeah.
Diving headfirst. It's water season. I'm water. Here I go. This one was saying like, we have this idea that like, because of the masculine energy we're used to in our in our patriarchy of our society, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
We have this idea that women taking over and being more control, or if the tables were always turned and it just so happened to be that the feminine energy was in control of things, right? We have this idea that it would be exactly the same, where women are in power and men don't have as many rights,
right?
And blah, 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 blah. And it's like, literally the whole point of this is that those energies are so vastly different. And with feminine energy run as a matriarchy, it's very mother derivative, and like literally Mother Nature herself is a very naturally healing, cycling, blah, blah, blah. And it was just this whole idea that like, no, if women were the matriarchy, for example, it would be more equal, because there'd be a caring, nurturing, just empathy for other human and spirituality, and like the fucking soul shit would be at the center.
Yeah.
And like
emotional awareness and right,
and like
to be equal.
way less competition, and just like, what do you mean competition? We're human. And I just found that really beautiful, and that we're waking up to more of these ideas. And it's the Scorpio season as a whole, our generation being really tapped into Scorpio. Yeah, I don't know if I'm completely off with that, if that's not, but like, I feel like that's very Scorpio, getting into the depths of like, let's talk about what things would really look like if we burned it to the fucking ground.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
Hillary
Clinton is a Scorpio. I might cover her next episode.
Hell yeah.
Scorpio, Pisces moon, and the poor thing, like, with those signs, I could not lead a nation. Are you kidding me?
I honestly,
like, Scorpio is one of the top signs for presidents, but with the Pisces moon, like, oh my God. But
wow, that's really interesting that Scorpio is one of the top signs for presidents.
it makes so much sense. I mean, they
It
are the sign of
does.
power. Like
It's like a passionate sign that knows
they're
how to get it
comfortable.
done, and and like is comfortable with being disliked, or the or just, you know, the pressures of what that responsibility entails, right? That's really fascinating, Heather.
Yeah. But it's interesting. Like Scorpio is such a, like, I would say that all the water signs do have this feminine touch to it. And yet Scorpio is so masculine, I think, and fiery in a lot of ways. And it is, like, I think one of the few signs that sort of like feels both depending on the day. I don't know.
No, I think there's also in the way that we also come off this Libra balance, right? And then we talked, especially this Scorpio season, and the way we go into the Libra new moon right before we hit Scorpio. I do feel like, while I know Libra sort of symbolizes the balance too, I think a lot of it's very interesting that we go into Scorpio, which is sort of also known as this like phoenix rising from the ashes. And it's almost like we shift in from this like, okay, we got to find the balance. And then what a drastic thing that in order to do something like find balance, you got to burn it all to the ground. And then and then we enter after Scorpio, we enter Sag, which is even more of like the fire energy of resetting, reconquering, replacing, or, you know, any, you know, going forward with that. And then we settle into the Capricorn earth of like, okay, we've burned it to the ground. We've dealt with the consequences of burning it to the ground, and we've sat in it, and now we're anchoring and rooted. I just find that really interesting that Libra, like, it really just feels like these signs, hold on, Heather, don't tell me, the interpersonal.
Yes.
Thank you. The interpersonal signs we're in. It's really interesting to me that a lot of it, again, it matches our yearly calendar of fall, which is like we go through fall. And then I know winter also comes in Capricorn, but those two seasons as a whole, fall very much is a prep and bleeds into winter. The same, like it's the beginning of things dying. And then winter is a deeper, darker continuation of that before spring is a prep into full on summer, right? Yada, yada, yada. We all get how seasons work. Just find it really interesting that the interpersonal signs, not only do they align with things dying and then like getting deeper into the depth and like committing and owning that death, sticking it out for the rebirth that, you know, is to happen in the spring, right? I just find that really interesting. And then that symbolically, I know that they're all very different themes and very different elements, but it almost feels like they're like it's like a deck of, like they play into each other a little bit. And again, maybe I'm really feeling that this energy because of where the new moons line up.
Yeah.
The beginning of the sun signs. But I almost feel like a lot of Scorpio has been balanced, but a lot of that, unlike Libra, of like sort of figuring out and teetering on that balance and sort of like getting a good grip on the scales, so to speak. It's like we're in Scorpio and it's like, okay, now we're aware of like, and we're settling into the reality of what needs to be burned to the fucking ground.
Yeah, totally. It's like once you're in Scorpio, it's almost like you've kind of mastered the balance. Now we can play with stakes. Now we can like see what is actually of value. And like, I was just listening to this long Gordon Ramsay interview right before we started recording, and he is a Scorpio. We covered him last season on the podcast, and I find him to be a fascinating individual. He was going to be a professional soccer player before he switched and started doing comedy. Talk about a Scorpio rebirth, transition, ego death. But listening to him talk about his fire and his drive and how he's been through trauma and he just knew he was going to be successful, but it was like, how do I make it happen? I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to play with the best of them. But then what killed me is that he kept saying, I think one of the most valuable things in business is jeopardy, is like putting yourself or your business or whatever, like raising the stakes and like putting my restaurant in jeopardy, and like, or like taking a huge financial risk to like go for something that I know is risky, Like, he's like, I have to constantly do that in my life. Like, if I get too comfortable, I almost have to create drama in order to like perform at my highest level. And I'm like, if that is not the most Scorpio shit I've ever heard in my fucking life. Like,
I was gonna say, it reminds me of what is it? The Dark Knight Rises. No spoilers, but like Batman is so fucking Scorpio. Please don't even get me started. Comes out, not even a real superhero, just has money, involves himself in the shadows of night. Is all about being in the shadows and operating at night. Like, literally no one asked, and Batman's like, no, here's my 2 cents, and I'm gonna kick some ass. Oh, and no guns. Like, also involves himself and nobody asked. It's all about the shadows, like the shadow work, and then also like is like moral about it. Like, no one asked you, and then also you're gonna have like your limitations, like no guns, because like Batman won't use guns. So Batman is so fucking Scorpio. Who knew?
So funny.
We did. But there's like in the movie where he goes to the prison that's like underground or whatever. I don't know if you remember this, but it's like an underground cave or whatever. And he has to, like, all these prisoners are there and they can technically escape. They can climb up this wall and make this really scary, tricky like jump. And you will absolutely die if you do not make the jump. And so Batman keeps going up the wall while he has a rope tied around his waist and keeps trying to make the jump and keeps like missing, and he doesn't die because he's got the rope tied around his waist, but he just like can't get it done. And then he finally realizes like, I have to risk it all if I want to make the jump. And the whole point is that like it's very symbolic, and he removes the rope and just does it by like free, because it's like in the back subconsciously he knows that if he knows that rope is there for safety, he can rely on it. And he's like, I need to not rely on it. And then he of course makes the triumphant jump without the rope. And it's like, because he's, you know what I mean? That
you
feels very like
astound me with the way you
I'm like, that's not me, baby. That's Christopher Nolan. I can't take credit.
But the way your brain just goes to like the perfect image of like the thing I'm describing is
that's truly what it reminded me of. And I immediately was like, oh, I'm like, part of me wanted to be like, I've heard people say that. And I realized you saw that in a Batman movie, you bitch. So I have to be honest.
Oh my God, that's funny.
But no,
that is
I love that. I love that analogy. Yeah, very Scorpio. And yes, it's very funny to think of Batman being Scorpio.
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't know. I resonate with it. I feel like my yeah, well, I don't want to put Alex Nightingale on blast, but I've been dealing with this a lot. I mean, we always do, but I've been feeling this way a lot at my own Saturn return precipice. Like, I kind of miss that feeling of like having something to risk, and I kind of like want to just like burn everything to the ground and start over and feel that like passion, or feel that like I have to work. Like, I don't know.
No, yeah, I love like when people
Alex
are like,
said she gets that for me. Anyway.
Yes. Alex Nightingale is someone who I think is also likes it scrappy. And I don't know, especially the three, you mean Alex, like, not to make it about us, but I think, when entering the college major that we entered in, the college major that we did do, like, you kind of had to fight for yourself. We were in a program that didn't necessarily just like give you free reign and resources to the theater and the auditoriums and like all this help on putting together a show. We really had to like work and scrounge and really scrap shit together and get people to come out still, and learned how to be resourceful. And so I'm so grateful, as much as I like curse that program sometimes. I am still really grateful for all like the scrappiness it essentially taught me. And because I do think that's just how you're also like, the universe loves it. They say that the universe loves it when you give a shit, when you're trying.
Right.
And I think sometimes when you're really comfortable, it's easy to like, it's really easy to maybe like stop communicating with the universe when things are sort of just working out, or when you're comfortable. you get a lot more communicative with the universe when shit's not going in your favor. Because
Yeah.
you want to make sure you're being very clear with the universe on your
Mm-hmm.
intentions and what it is you want, because you don't like how something's going.
Yeah.
So I kind of love that sort of
Yeah.
analogy too about, I just, again, we go into the where we enter from the balance of Libra into, oh wait, Heather, I got it wrong though, because Capricorn is technically not, Sag and Capricorn are technically not interpersonal, are they?
Yeah, they're universal, but
I just find it interesting still that regardless, I'm not going to rehash everything I just said, but I do feel like it's interesting that the Libra, it makes sense to me that Libra goes into this balance, then that Scorpio restarts into this fresh, burn it all down business, right? But, and before we move into these bigger universal signs,
yeah.
it is just, it still counts.
Yeah, no, totally.
I just realized as I was talking, I was like, oh yeah, this cycle starts with fire. So technically we're ending and we end on water. So this ending on Scorpio water of burning it all to the ground, a nice fresh restart before we head into the universal signs. Yeah. Interesting.
I also think it's interesting that Scorpio gets a reputation for being kind of spiritual. And I would say that Scorpio onward, like Scorpio, Sagittarius, Aquarius, Capricorn, and Pisces, I would say are probably the most spiritual, broad scoped energies of the zodiac. And it makes sense because they're at the end of the zodiac. But Sagittarius actually is the sign attributed with like belief systems and like figuring out your philosophy on life and like your truth. And it's, people don't talk about it enough, but it really is about like your philosophical beliefs and stuff. And I think it's cool that Scorpio comes before Sag, which
oh my
has
God,
its own
that's so
spiritual
interesting.
tone.
Yeah. That's so interesting. Again, not to bring her up, but it is just another episode. It's just another day. Taylor Swift, that's like how her documentary starts. Like she talks about how she's like, I don't know where it comes from, but just since I was, and she's a Sag. Right. And she's like, just even as a young girl, I had this like, I created an entire belief system for myself with the moral compass of like just being like a good girl, like just being like good. It was like I built belief systems around it. She talks about why this shapes so much of her in her career later on and how this kind of goes wrong for her. But this was like a tool she just built when she was a kid. She's a little Sagittarius.
Yeah, no. And the more
like,
you,
that's really interesting to hear about Sag. I don't know if I ever knew that, but then I'm like, oh my God, my favorite Sag said that.
Yeah. Casey Musgraves, who's a Leo, but Sag moon. Most of her songs are so Sagittarius. She is so philosophically focused. I mean, the song Follow Your Arrow is the most Sagittarius song I've ever heard. And the symbol of Sagittarius is a centaur, a horse with a man with a bow and arrow, half horse, half man with a bow and arrow. And it's all about, follow your arrow. Sag is all about like dreaming big, figuring out your personal beliefs and like feeling optimistic about it and journeying forward and pointing the arrow in the direction based on your belief system.
I love that.
Yeah. But we're not there yet. But I love Sag and I love Scorpio too. And it makes sense.
And the way it all bleeds in
first before you can. And like Abraham Maslow's like law of, what is it called? His like hierarchy of psychological needs or something, where it's like fundamentally it's like Aries Taurus. You need a strong identity and you need security, financial, food, otherwise. Then you can think about relationships. Then you can start thinking about like spirituality and your purpose and your place in the universe and broader scope things. And it all fits with the zodiac.
Every sign has a different order of like, this is what's important to you. This is how many steps away you are from the other ones, from the other ways of like the other ways of which you need to also live. It's just, I don't know. As we know, the water can be heavy, but similar to you, Heather, I believe I thrive a little bit during these times. I'm always kind of watery. So like when I'm being told to really lean into that, it's like, okay, aye,
thank you. I have permission.
Rough water ahead. Don't mind if I do, you know? But yeah, I'm also ready. I really love, again, learning about Scorpio as a phoenix. I love looking at it that way symbolically. I love really understanding now what it means for a Scorpio to really be the fire sign of the waters. And then we bleed into one of my favorite fire signs that we have, and bleed into the universal signs, which is sort of our realm as well, Heather. So it's like interesting too that Scorpio is sort of the end of the interpersonal, but still such a bridge between interpersonal and universal as well.
Yes.
And we're in the throes of it, baby, and I love it.
I love it too. Love it.
Shall we hop into these charts, Heather?
We must.
Heather, I completely forgot to do our introduction at the beginning of this. I got into the Scorpio waves.
You did.
I let them take me out to the deep end. You know how I like it. Folks, ladies, gents, water signs, earth signs, fire signs, and air. Welcome, Heather Cunningham, our astrology light, our guiding post, our goddess of the education that is astrology. Let me fucking move on. She's amazing. I love her, Heather Cunningham. And it's me, Miranda. Even when I have nothing to say, I have something to say.
Amazing. I love you.
I'm just a mere follower to Heather's heels, and there's no one else I'd rather be and nowhere else I'd rather go.
Oh my goodness.
No, Heather, you just like, yeah, every freaking time we record this shit, I am just always like, I learn more and more every day. Listeners, we hope you do too. And with that, Heather, shall we jump in to these Scorpio signs we have today?
Let's.
A couple of watery birth charts, some deep depth birth charts.
Yeah. I mean, there are so many Scorpio celebrities to choose from. I've said it once, I'll say it again. So many. It makes it like I was saying, majority of presidents, they're just comfortable in that space. It's because they are the phoenix, rising like to the heights of fame.
This is why I'm so sorry, it's twice now I'm bringing her up, but like people always joke that it's Taylor Swift's rising that we don't have, right? We know she's a Cancer moon,
but astro.com now says that it's Scorpio, but that's changed 3 times since I've been analyzing. So
it does say it's Scorpio rising,
but right now it does. Yeah,
and it is Cancer moon, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because like she literally has an entire song recently about a phoenix rising from the ashes. She talks about that. Like, she's like, how many times she's like, even I'm exhausted of doing this. Like, it's it routinely shows up in her life of she has to be reborn and rebirth. And that's her rising, right? Interesting. Sorry, but I just
combined with the Sagittarius that needs to constantly expand and aim higher too. That is a powerful.
But I apologize, Heather. I'm not trying to make it about Taylor.
No, I'm glad you brought that up.
I forgot recently. It's a newer song that she released.
Funny. I'm gonna listen to it.
Called "You're Losing Me." About Joe. Oh. It was like a late midnights. Was it midnights? Yeah, I think it was like a late midnights release. Yeah, it was like a late midnights release. You have to you had to buy the single or you had to get it downloaded from a friend. So I'll send it to you. I mean, nothing. Anyway. But yes, exactly. This idea of the phoenix rising from the ashes. Please, Heather, go on.
Yeah. So today I'm covering a hugely famous Scorpio, Leonardo DiCaprio. Yummy. And
the phoenix himself.
And Leonardo DiCaprio is a Scorpio sun, Libra moon, Libra rising, a flirt, if I say so.
No wonder.
Yeah. Very much a relationship. Well, the funny thing is, it's so much relationship energy, and yet he's one of those famous ass Scorpios who can get any young girl he wants. Why be in a committed relationship? Why deal with the Scorpio difficulties of true intimacy? Oh my God. No, it's very Libra also, I feel like, to be I want the shiny thing. I don't know.
Right. Well, and also, he's a Hollywood actor.
Yeah, I
and
mean, there's so many
he
layers.
gets to just like not have to grow up and can't just like date half his age and models. Even though he still looks good. But
oh yeah.
Isn't in his 30s. Okay. One last thing I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna shut the fuck up. Is Taylor Swift's song "The Man"? She has a whole thing about like, because if I was a man, then I'd be the man. And one of her lines is, I'd be just like Leo. They would toast to me. Oh, let the players play. I'd be just like Leo and Saint-Tropez, which is like the iconic, like, I don't know, for the folks who don't remember this or know this, because of this line, I did look it up and I was like, oh, I do remember this now. But it was like he was on a yacht in like off the coast of Saint-Tropez. That's like, and was just like on a yacht with all these young models, just like being single, just like being Leo, getting papped like crazy. And yeah, it was just more of a commentary on Taylor. She gets roasted all the time for the dating, but it's like, oh, Leonardo DiCaprio can date models half his age and like publicly be on a yacht with them. And we're just all gonna, that's like, so again, just kind of funny. We're covering him, a Scorpio, and Taylor's Scorpio rising ass covered him in a song. Okay, I'm done.
That is funny.
But
I'm glad. Yeah.
This is his whole thing. And he's got that, you're so right, that Libra charm. Like, because even though people know this about Leo, and I feel like we're all kind of like, Leo, get it together a little, would ya? It's still like, Leo.
I mean,
Leo.
love him, but you hate him, but you love him.
Go on.
Yeah, a charmer. And with Venus tightly conjunct the sun, so Venus, the planet of beauty, Libra's ruling planet's right next to the sun. This is such a, like, I'm sure he is a top-notch flirt. Even, and yeah, but very Scorpio. So Sun, Venus, and Mars are in Scorpio in the second house. The thing that strikes me immediately about this chart is that it's all very clumped in like the first, second, and third house. None of the planets are in the top half, the top hemisphere, except for Saturn in the 10th. Everything is in the first couple of houses, which I found super surprising because he's been in the limelight like forever. And granted, he's a Scorpio, and I feel like he's not, one of these celebrities like Britney Spears or someone who's like, I mean, not that she wanted that either, but like, he's not
but
like
he's
in
not
People magazine
on, like,
every week.
Socials.
Yeah.
Right. He it is funny that he's one of the biggest celebrities of all time, but then like just I feel like he's never had to comment on his like dating life or anything like that. Like he's done a really good job to like
interviews. Like
I don't know. That's I
Yeah.
feel like I can't remember last time I've seen him do one. And so it's like he gets to be private about that kind of shit, which is interesting because he's so famous. It's always interesting when Scorpios are able to pull off, when a really famous Scorpio is able to also still pull off their Scorpio ways of privacy.
Yeah.
And I think he falls under as someone who does that. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So yeah, the second house, like 3 personal planets in Scorpio, which the second house is Taurus's house of like building security and financial, material wealth and feeling like secure in that way, which is interesting. And then Mercury, Uranus, the moon, and Pluto are in Libra in the first house of like identity and experiencing your power as an individual, and just it's Aries house. So yeah, and then Saturn is in the 10th house of career, aspecting these things, but that's the only planet in the top. And it's interesting. He started acting when he was like 5 years old, but I guess there was this period where as a child, like he was super dedicated as a Scorpio, had like an innate drive from a young age, was like super trying to make a career as an actor happen and going on like hundreds of auditions. And for a while, he wasn't getting anything. And he was about to quit. And then his dad, who is like a comic book distributor or something, like kind of works in an artistic realm, was like, why don't you just keep at it for a little longer? And then he got on like growing pains, or he started having like bigger breaks.
Interesting.
Yeah, and Pluto, Scorpio's ruling planet, is right by the ascendant in the first house, which I'm sure I really had trouble finding a lot of information on him, like biographically. But I'm sure with
Interesting.
these placements has had to transform and rise from the ashes many times. And Saturn being in the 10th does show like challenges with career, late bloomer. I guess there is that whole thing of like took him forever to win an Oscar, which
Oh
is kind of
yeah.
dumb even anyway. Like
And
I
I
think
thought he had the greatest clapback. Not that he was even rude about it, but like even Leo himself. And I always kind of thought, I personally always kind of felt this, not just for Leo, but I've always been kind of like, God, that's got to be so rough for actors and actresses. Like already the job itself can be a rewarding one, yes, but also a very stressful one, especially when you become famous and then you have all your fans putting all this pressure on the fact that like you should be winning these awards. And it's like, I don't think any actor, I mean, you hope to one day win. You hope, you pray and hope that your career gets to a place where you're
that's
even
not the
nominated.
end all be all. Like,
Right, where you're even nominated, but I just, the pressure that's put on award shows in any category of entertainment
I
or
think it's
really anything
dumb.
is just kind of, it is always just like, to me it's just so blatantly obvious that like that's just not anything an artist should give a fuck about,
Yeah.
respectfully. I think it's a great honor it's to win, and by all means be excited and props to you, but any artist not winning awards does not take away from the art itself. Come on,
Yeah.
we
It's
know
like
this.
all
This is
these
old news.
musicians being like,
Yeah,
pitchfork, fuck it. Who gives a shit?
some
I
of
don't
my
care what
favorite
they say.
songs ever would never probably ever be Grammy nominations, and that's
Hmm.
fine. Same with some of my favorite movies. I don't give a fuck that they're not Oscar nominees.
No, absolutely.
And so yeah, I was always like, and it doesn't take away that Leo is some of America's favorite like, he's one of the favorite actors of our time, and didn't win for the longest time, and then did win for something when it really counted. It's,
Hmm.
I think he won for The Revenant finally, which, like,
Yeah.
as he should. And
Yeah.
then he made his whole like a fucking Scorpio. His whole speech was like, we filmed this in the Arctic or whatever the fuck. And I'm really in my Scorpio. I'm cussing a
I
lot.
love it. I love it. I
I
know.
put
I
my
cuss
black
so
hoodie
much.
on and
I mean, I
I'm
always do, but
being a little extra. I do apologize, folks. This is not going to be a G episode, and they never have been and never will be, most likely. But I'm in my Scorpio ways right now. But yeah, he talks about, while we were filming this, global warming's real. This is a
right,
big
right.
deal. After all those years when everyone's like, Leo needs to win, he made his entire speech about the global warming, which
Yeah.
like was cool.
It's very
Um,
Scorpio and it's very Libra of like,
right.
hey,
Cool that it's Scorpio.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
so
that is
Scorpio.
cool. It is totally, totally.
It's cool in the way that
Um,
it's just like, you can't make this shit up.
you
Come
what?
on, Heather. You can't make this shit up.
No, you can't. You really
That's
can't.
so Scorpio. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
The last thing I was going to say is that I feel like my mom and I joke about this. We watched so many Leonardo DiCaprio movies growing up together and like gushed over just how cute he was. But we also would talk about how like every character he plays, he's like in the depths of pain. Like he's like always, he's so good at playing like the guy who like the stakes are so high and like I'm struggling, and like he's good at playing struggle. And like I feel like
Mm.
probably 80% of the characters he's played, you could argue, are Scorpios. And I just want to add that. The Revenant, such a Scorpio story.
Oh,
Like this,
please.
like
Yeah.
needing to survive, you know?
Mm-hmm. Especially for like justice and like
Mm-hmm.
your own blood
Right.
of like your family, and there's so much passion behind his entire will to live. There was heart
Mm-hmm.
and soul behind his entire will to live, even though it's like one of the goriest, like gruesome stories and movies. God, I love it.
Yeah.
And also, yeah, even when he's Jack, ooh, the simple spoiler alert for the 94 movie Titanic. Uh as a Scorpio would, he sinks to the depths.
I most Scorpio in that movie. The like poor man who's like, just because I don't have money does not mean I am less powerful than you. Watch me get the girl. Watch me like fight to the death for her. Watch me paint her while she's naked. Like, and then
That's so
I'll try my
Scorpio.
best to rescue her in the end
Watch,
when we're
yeah, and also
freezing.
watch me
And
die for her,
yeah,
essentially. It's so Scorpio. And I'm like, you just met, that's so Scorpio. um, But yeah, exactly. Like to me, that couldn't be more Scorpio symbolically and literally. But yeah, that's just funny. Again, it's always funny too, especially with Scorpios. I feel like we've covered, not that this probably isn't true with a lot of actors, right? Like this is the whole point of acting. You're supposed to know your character, and it only makes sense that a lot of times people end up sort of playing characters that are sort of characters of themselves, so to speak. And I find it funny that like we also did Walking Phoenix, and he's also like, it's like he plays Scorpios. Like and I
Yeah.
feel like very similar for Leo. He plays a lot of like Scorpios.
Yeah. I feel
Um
like it's good acting if you can tap into your own shit.
yeah, I agree. I don't
Yeah.
know if Leo's the same way as like, I know Tom Cruise, at least this is the rumor. Like Tom Cruise has like a team of writers who like rewrite his scripts so that his lines sound like Tom Cruise. And I want to be clear that I think that is a little different. Like I do actually think, I think Leo can act.
Oh my God. Yeah. Do
Respectfully.
not even compare. Oh my God. Sorry. I'm not a fan of Tom Cruise.
I mean, I had this argument the other day with someone where someone was calling him a good actor. I'm like, I don't think, I'm not obviously going to call Tom Cruise a bad actor, but I also
Sure.
think it's easy when you're sort of playing Tom Cruise in everything you do, respectfully. Like that is just sort of who he plays. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like Leo plays characters, and he's not
Yeah.
just Leo in every movie.
No, I
Um,
don't think so. I don't think so. But it is, I mean, even in Romeo and Juliet too, the it's so I love
that's so
his movies
Scorpio.
because I feel like, yeah, he's so good at like portraying struggle and romance.
Mm-hmm. Leo, we
What a
love you.
dreamy, dreamy boy.
I know. I'm like, I'm gonna watch Titanic after this.
Mhm.
We used to have like the two cassette or like the two VHS tape set, like part one and part two. Like, God, I loved that movie growing up. I
Mhm.
watched it way.
Yeah. Jake and I watched it recently. We watch it all the time. It's like our
I saw
favorite.
it for its anniversary, like in the AMC
Yes, me
theater.
too.
It
Me
was
too.
so fun and
Mhm.
like cool seeing it in the theater. I love that they do that. I love that they bring back
Did you
movies.
see the 3D version recently? Is that what you're
Yes.
talking about? Oh
And
my God,
we didn't
Jake
know
and
it was
I.
3D until we got there. And we were like, what the fuck? And then I was like, as I was in there, I was like, this is very overstimulating.
It's so overstimulating. Jake and I took edibles and went, and we were like, for the first 45 minutes, we were cracking up. We were like, this feels so weird. Like,
Yeah.
why is the
You
old
don't really
lady
want to
in our
feel like you're
face?
there. Yeah.
Like, why? I don't know. The first half of the
I'm
movie
in
with the
her
3D, we
wrinkles.
were like being high. Like, it was trippy. It was silly.
I know it really was like quite overstimulating. And we double checked the ticket. It did not say anything about 3D on there. They really surprised us with that.
They need to
And
stop, honestly. The 3D is
yeah.
like a little
Uh,
excessive.
but yeah. Anyway, Leo, come on the pod.
Oh, Leo.
Rise from the dead like a phoenix would from the ashes and come on the pod. Alrighty, Heather. Shall we move on to our next Scorpio birth chart?
Yes.
This one's fun because, as we talked about earlier, Libra being sort of this like pre sort of balance theme into the final burning it all down of the Scorpio theme as well. How Libra and Scorpio sort of connect. We covered Will Smith in Libra season not too long ago. Today we will be covering Willow Smith, Will Smith's daughter. Which like it's extra fun talking about the Libra and Scorpio balance, like I said, and then seeing like, their differences and also their similarities, right?
Yeah.
While looking at Willow Smith's chart, uh, it's we have Scorpio Sun, Capricorn Moon, Gemini. So it's a balanced chart in the sense of earth, water, and air.
Mm-hmm.
And then
And Venus and Sag, there's fire too.
I was
Although
gonna
not a
say,
lot. But
but even the chart itself is like, it's not quite balanced, but like literally straight down the middle horizontally. We've got like those red clumps in this
mm-hmm.
sort of triangle. And although it's not like perfectly balanced, it's definitely not all clumped.
No,
And
it's not. It's pretty dynamic.
Yeah. And like, which is funny because when I think about like Will Smith as an entertainer, as a performer, how we love him, obviously they're different people. But when we think about Will Smith in that way, he's a very dynamic entertainer. But then I believe when we covered his chart, Heather, maybe I totally remember this wrong, but it was like there were some clumps there. It was like the career.
It was.
It was like an easier, not an easier, but a more like lucky, sort of stable career path in a way that the relationship was going to be the struggle. And I feel like it was a more lopsided chart.
It was.
And then to have Willow, who has these two famous parents, and then a chart that's sort of like not quite perfect, but still a little more accumulates a little bit more of the overall pie, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just interesting. And
totally
how different their dynamics are, because Will Smith did not grow up famous, or did not grow up with like famous parents.
Yeah, and I love looking at the charts of children
nepos.
of nepos of big celebrities. Yeah, no, I find it really interesting because usually there's some indication that you were born into fame.
Right. And like Willow would do it, or like even if you're not, or like, born into fame, and then also the whole tale as old as time of them like pursuing a career similar to your parents, right? And Willow having some hits. I whip my hair back and forth.
I like the music,
and the
actually.
more recent music being very like a lot being if I'm being quite honest, being very Scorpio. A lot of her newer music.
I don't know if I've heard. There's that one song I love.
Shouts out to my Capricorn friend in LA, Jacqueline Ferguson. She showed me Willow's like most recent album I guess this would have been like 2018, or excuse me, 2019, 2020. So like the album that came around that time. And I literally remember being like, this is Willow Smith. Like it sounded very different from which I loved. I whipped my hair back and forth. I loved that song. But then it was also just sort of like, this is poetry. Like it just was so different from that and still good in its own right. While being so completely different from another song of hers I loved. That was like a huge radio hit.
Yeah.
And now knowing and paying attention to this shit, I'm like, oh, she like matured and her Scorpio like really came out. Her Capricorn moon probably allowed for that work ethic and that poetry and that dark side to sort of express itself. And I think the older she's like gotten too, it just feels like, she's adjusted to the fame and is kind of like, fuck y'all. And like, I know that like it's kind of trendy right now to give the Nepo babies a lot of shit. And to me, it is like, I get the argument, right? It's kind of like, yeah, fuck you. If everyone else had this X, Y, and Z connection, we'd all be there, blah, blah, blah. But it's also kind of like, whenever I think about it, I'm like, if I were seriously a Nepo baby, would I not pursue something that is also very passionate to me, especially when I know, if anything, to me, I'm kind of like, you should pursue an acting or entertainment career, especially if you know you have a hookup. That's like the way to guarantee it. Like, I get the argument, but I'm also kind of like, are people really putting themselves in Nepo baby's shoes? Like, what do we expect them to do?
Would take it full advantage. Like,
well, it's also kind of this idea of like, is it right or wrong to tell someone who's a Nepo baby that, because like Miley Cyrus, for example, I need her to make music. I'm very happy she's a star. Exactly. And so, when I really think about it, sometimes I'm like, who are we to tell Nepo babies they can't pursue that? What do we want them to do? What do we expect them to do? And, anyway, but I do love that. While still, it does still feel like, Willow Smith has all the power in the world to just like punch out radio hits if she wanted to. She's got that hookup. Will Smith's her father, please. And she's already made her own radio hits, but it's really cool to see her more recent art really sort of reflect that Scorpio passion and depth is more to speak. And her chart being sort of like very occupied, not perfectly balanced, but very like kind of more spread out. I feel like, having that Libra father, that Capricorn moon for that like, work ethic that we love to see, the Gemini air, so can adapt to multiple situations. I feel like we will also see Willow similar to Will. We will also see her career sort of maybe be a full house. Like we'll see her maybe dip more into acting. We'll see her maybe try other aspects, just because her chart is sort of one that, and like the Gemini rising, you know, the interest is there and the chart is balanced in that way. And then she's born a Nepo baby in the way that it's like that part will always, you know, she's very lucky in the way that gets to be stable for her sort of starting out. But I'm interested to see where her relationships take her, where those go, if we'll even know anything about them as she ages.
Did you say that knowing that there's strong relationship themes in this chart?
No. All due respect,
'Cause-
Heather. Anytime I think I'm reading this chart, I realize I don't think I know what I'm fucking
Well,
looking at all.
I don't even. I'm still trying to be a master
But
at
no, not at
natal chart
all.
reading. It's such a. But like,
Right. I appreciate
no,
you
but
saying that.
she has
No, I
Venus
didn't.
and
I
Pluto.
wouldn't know how to look for that if I tried right now. I
Well,
think I think I could find it, but it would take me really like printing it out, highlighting, taking my time to look up. Yeah, not while we're doing this, but
right.
cool.
Yeah, no, you were spot on. I was just gonna say, like, looking at this chart, like in certain ways it's an easy chart. There's these nice grand trines, like you were saying, these like blue triangles that are very nice, with some of that action being in like the 5th house of self-expression, close to the midheaven of like public success and career in Aquarius. But then for me, the thing that sticks out in the chart and the real struggle of the chart is the 7th house. The 7th house is Libra's house, one-to-one relationships. And Willow has, actually, it's hard to say if the moon is right at the end of the 7th or right at the beginning of the 8th. It's right on the line in between the two. But then Venus and Pluto next to each other in the 7th, the house of relationships, with Venus, the like planet of love and relationships, next to Pluto, Scorpio's planet of struggle and power and control and like going to the depths. Plus the fact that Willow just is a Scorpio, plus the fact that it's in opposition to Jupiter, which amplifies everything in the 12th house, which is notoriously a difficult house. And then Saturn's there too. I feel that there's probably, honestly, maybe some identity things, but also like,
especially with two famous parents.
I'm sure, yeah.
Both in the limelight, both airing out your family's laundry, whether you like it or not, on their fucking red table talk show, and like
Jesus Christ,
being
I
in the
can't
public eye
imagine being in
against
that
your
family.
will. Yeah, kind of
Holy
really,
shit.
especially as a Scorpio, when all you want is privacy. I feel like if the Smiths had a like a full on reality show the way the Kardashians do, Willow would be very similarly like Kendall, who is also a Scorpio, in the way that she's like never in the episodes and thrives on being different from her family. Like it's something that she likes about herself. And I feel like that's very Willow, owning her, like, you know, her like the way fame was sort of not her option, but it's something she has like darkingly and begrudgingly has to deal with, right? In her Scorpio way, this is her like her darkness.
Yeah, it makes
and no
sense.
wonder, having I feel like nepo babies having identity issues is very common. So
yeah, it makes
that
sense.
is really interesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Not that everything about her existence is, I feel like I'm being really negative. That's not what I mean, but I'm just
no.
We love to.
Yeah.
It's a deep chart, and I think it's a perfect example that people love to not think of it's a lot easier and more fun to think of nepo babies as not human, because then you can feel better about the lack of resources you have available to you that they just have kind of thrust upon them. But I also think, you know, it's interesting to look at nepo babies charts, because I feel like things that just, you know, aren't maybe struggles for us, the more simpler things, it always somehow manifests into being struggles for them, and their charts usually always kind of show that. While the thing, you know, people who maybe have stable relationships or more stable upbringings and lives, it's the career that takes longer, or blah blah blah, or you're working for it longer. It's just always interesting to watch that flip. And every human, right? Willow, sweet baby angel.
I wish I could remember that song that I love that she wrote.
I know, I'm gonna return to her that album that my friend showed me, because it changed me.
Tongue, where she like belts, but it's like a dance groove almost. Anyway,
I know what you're talking about. I do. Alex Nightingale will tell us.
Mm-hmm.
Heather, shall we let the folks know what the heck's going on? These upcoming Scorpio splashes we have here.
The astrologers are very amped up about this week. Let me tell
God.
you.
Grab your life jackets, bitch. We're sinking. The Titanic's going down, bitch. We're not fitting on the door, bitch. God, I'm sorry.
No, it is. There's some intense stuff, but it's not like I think that actually the end of the year going in, it's astrologers also love to like be clickbaity and be like, oh my God, most intense week of blah, blah, blah. But yeah, no, but it's exciting nonetheless. Venus, which basically Venus has been a highlight this year because we had that long ass Venus retrograde. And most of the eclipses we've had have been Venus ruled signs. We had a lot of Libra and Taurus stuff going on with the eclipses, the node moving into Libra. Like Taurus and Libra have been big players this year. And then Venus had the long retrograde. So Venus now entering Libra, people are very excited about. I'm very excited about because Libra is ruled by Venus. So Venus is very comfortable in Libra. It's been in Virgo for about a month. And that's not as fun because, Venus is all about beauty and attraction and things like that. And Virgo is very like about the details and the grind and the work. And now it gets to be in Libra. And I think that it'll be a nice, fresh energy for relationships and connecting and relating to others.
Gorgeous.
That's on the 8th. Then November 10th, Mercury enters Sagittarius. We have another personal planet entering a new sign. And that's super fun too, because Mercury rules Gemini. It's very language oriented, and Sagittarius is very good with language. It's the opposite of Gemini. And I would say like the higher octave of Gemini, where it's, like I said, it's Gemini is all about like, communicating and learning and almost like that air sign sort of gossipy, like being playful and mischievous and but Sagittarius like takes that to like the higher realm where it's like, okay, I can use my intellectual understanding to like form belief systems and to like philosophize on
Taylor
grander
Swift
things.
again.
Right.
The songwriter herself. Go on. I'm sorry.
So this is the first planet that's going to be in Sagittarius. Soon we're going to have more planets going into Sag. So we're sort of on the precipice of new, fresh Sag energy happening. And, then if you want to get really detailed, they're saying like Mercury enters Sagittarius, but then it immediately squares Saturn and Pisces. And that's like got to be careful, got to have caution. And then, so yes. Yeah, so right.
I was like, I'll just let you continue.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So people in the astrology community are very like, okay, it's really cool that Mercury is entering Sagittarius. It's really comfortable there. We're going to all get philosophical. Sagittarius is like fiery, fun, freedom seeking, but as soon as it enters Sagittarius, it squares Saturn, which is like the least fun aspect in the world. Saturn is restriction, limitations, gotta face authority, gotta like be earthy about it. So there's that. But honestly, like that happens. Mercury must square Saturn multiple times a year. So that's not like huge on my radar.
Right.
November 11th, Saturday, Mars in Scorpio forms an opposition to Uranus and Taurus. And this is like a bigger deal. Whenever Mars and Uranus are together, it's sort of like, don't be too impulsive. It's the Mars sort of masculine principle of like fire and aggression combined with Uranus, which is very like surprises and like, things happening suddenly. And just like, I don't know, it's a time to maybe not be so impulsive. And then the Scorpio new moon. Yeah. Scorpio new moon right after that on November 13th on Monday.
Yeah.
And whenever I say that, that usually means
Looking
that Sunday, right? It usually means like Monday at like 1 a.m. So really like Sunday night, you'll be feeling it.
Right.
But yeah, it's a Scorpio new moon and there's a lot of dynamics happening with the Scorpio new moon. It's also in opposition to Uranus. And yeah, Uranus is one of the big players in astrology. Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, the outermost planets. Whenever shit's going down with those planets, it's like bigger energy. And Uranus is like sudden shakeups. It's Aquarius's planet of like sudden inspiration, or like needing to suddenly drop everything and move to a new place, or like you meet someone new out of the blue who becomes a fast friend and completely changes your life, or like stuff like that, or like I don't know. It's not necessarily positive or negative, but it's like erratic stuff that can produce change and allow for more freedom usually. But so
we love
this
that.
Scorpio new moon, yes, is in conversation opposing Uranus, which has been in Taurus for a while. So again, more of these Scorpio Taurus themes that we're not yet finished with, about, you know, personal values, possessiveness, jealousy, but also just like knowing what you value and having strength to go for that full-heartedly, I think is what Scorpio
I love
and Taurus
that.
both deal with. Yeah.
Your worth, baby. Knowing your fucking worth.
Exactly. Yeah.
And holding and not holding a Black Friday sale in the process. God. We don't put ourselves on sale.
We don't.
We are expensive merchandise,
fucking
baby.
Black Friday.
Oh my God. I love it. Actually, it's Cyber Monday I'm a fan of, because no one has to get fucking hurt.
I know.
And I don't have to leave the house and risk getting hurt. No, yeah. Oh, Heather, I love it. This has been such a deep Scorpio-esque episode. And again, it's so nice that we're exploring it and it's not this dark, twisted, scary thing. Scorpio is a very, like, going deep doesn't have to be scary. When you embrace it and you lean into it, it's really worth the look. It's a worthwhile time. It's really worth the time to go deep. Many
successful Scorpios.
Yeah, because they're doing the fucking work. Yeah. And not only that, when I say do the work, I don't mean change everything about yourself. When I say do the work, I mean accept everything about yourself. I think Scorpios are we've talked about this before too, Heather, and it's just really funny that we're pointing out how there's so many famous ones, because out of all the signs, Scorpio is very down to just own the parts that most people would hate to admit about themselves. Scorpio
and turn
is
it
just
into
like
an asset, or like use it in a positive way. Yeah,
exactly. It's a less it's like every sign. You teach us this every episode, but like every sign truly has a lesson to be had for everyone, even if you're not that element or you don't feel like you have those elements. There's still being in that energy. There's something for you always. Pay attention to the changes, y'all. That's where the beauty is. Pay attention to the depths. Oh, I love it. I love this time.
Love it too.
I love you, Heather.
Fun. I love you so much.
Love you, listeners. We will be right back here next week.
More
gorgeous time.
Abundance.
Never ending, infinite abundance to you and yours. Love you, Heather. Love you, listeners. Bye.